All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andrea Peloquin, and I am the events manager here at JW Pepper. In these times of virtual learning and making music with restrictions of all sorts, we need options and ideas to keep our students engaged. Perhaps it's different types of lessons, or maybe even starting new programs or alternative programs for those students who need something different. I was recently introduced to a new set of books from Hal Leonard called The Modern Band Method, which teaches students how to play guitar, keyboard, drums, or bass in either a group or an individual setting. It was created by the folks at Little Kids Rock, a fantastic organization that brings modern band programs to schools all over the country, helping kids to engage with music on a whole different level. This method and organization intrigued me, as I know teachers are looking for different ways to keep things going during these times. So I invited Scott Burstein and Mary Claxton from Little Kids Rock to be guests with us today and to talk with us about their program and their method and how teachers can get started with a program of their own. Our hope is that this gives you yet another tool in your toolbox as you work to keep students playing music. So let's get started. We're going to start with a few announcements first. So, first thing, we will be recording this webinar, and a link to the recording will be sent to everyone who registered tomorrow in case you missed something or want to share it with any of your colleagues. You'll also be receiving a certificate of attendance for being at the webinar in that same email. Simply print it out and add your name. If you have any questions about the certificate or the recording, you can email me at events@jwpepper.com. And if you happen to be watching this at a different time, not during our live webinar, and you do need a certificate of attendance, feel free to email me at that same email, events@jwpepper.com, to get your certificate. We've got our chat window open here. So go ahead and put any questions you have in there, and then we'll either answer them as we can throughout the session, or we'll save it for the Q&A at the end. So let's practice real quick. So if you would all just open your chat window and tell us where you're joining us from. We'd love to see who's with us here live today. So just give us your city and your state. Excellent. Love seeing these come in. Excellent. So go ahead and keep adding those in there. We know there's more than one person here. All right, great. It's great to see you all here. As you're doing that, you're all muted automatically because it's a webinar. So asking questions in the chat will be the best way to get in touch with us. And finally, you're going to be asked to complete a quick survey at the end when you leave the webinar. So please take a moment to give us your feedback. And if you have any ideas for any other topics you'd like us to take on, please let us know. All right. So today, our goal is to have you learn the following by the end of the webinar. You're going to learn about the modern band philosophy and what it is and why this book has it in its title. You're going to learn what instruments are needed to get a program started. You're going to learn what materials are available for you to make that job easier. You're going to learn how to get support from administrators and parents. And then you're going to learn how to get comfortable teaching this method because it's a little outside of the norm of what you do on an average day. So I am super excited to introduce, I have to get my handouts here, to introduce today's panelists. Mary Claxton has spent her professional life at the joyful intersection of music performance, teaching, and advocacy. Her early passion for music led her to be involved with every musical ensemble possible: band, choir, jazz band, pit orchestra, and drumline, as well as informal experiences with various genres of pop bands. In the classroom, Mary went on to teach nearly every one of those same ensembles and later was pulled particularly towards the modern band movement that emphasized the songwriting and student-centered aspects that had made music so meaningful to her throughout the years. She joined the Little Kids Rock team full time as the Colorado Director of Programs in 2017 and currently works as Senior Developer of Curricular Programs. She continues to perform often on drums, vocals, and ukulele, working hard to further her skills and continue the conversation with her community and students about the role music plays in reflecting and changing our world. So, welcome, Mary. And then we've got Scott Burstein, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning at Little Kids Rock. He was introduced to Little Kids Rock in 2004 at one of their first trainings and has been involved with them ever since. Scott taught music in the Los Angeles public school system for 12 years before joining the team as the full-time Los Angeles County Regional Program Director in 2012. His duties include managing all music content of the organization, including training, professional development, and curriculum. We are so excited to have you all here today. Thank you, Scott and Mary, for being with us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's talk. Hey, guys.
Howdy.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I've got some questions for you. Let's get started with this. Let's start by giving folks a quick background on what Little Kids Rock is, if they don't already know. So
I guess
Okay.
Yeah, sure, I'll take that one. So Little Kids Rock, we're a nonprofit organization that was started in 2001. And it was started with the goal of teaching kids music that they felt expressed themselves and where are they at. I think it's always interesting to know a little bit about how it came about. Our founder, Dave Wish, was a classroom first grade teacher teaching in Northern California in an area where at that time they didn't have music in the schools at all. And he was just a first grade general ed teacher and said, like, I'm a guitar player, I'm gonna teach my kids, and found that his kids were super into it. He asked them what they wanted to learn and then taught it to them. And then started teaching some other teachers at his school when he had too many kids wanting to be involved, and then said, I think that this is important, and immediately recognized how important it was for teachers to have a background in understanding how to teach. And the instrument part of it was something that came later. Like the music part, it's much more important that you're familiar with these classroom teaching skills than being an amazing guitar player to teach guitar. And it grew and it blossomed. And so at this point, we're working with roughly about 3,000 teachers in the United States. And when I say we're working with teachers, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, because we train teachers and we provide resources, but we don't pay teachers. We're not hiring them to go into classrooms. We're not like doing that. The districts are. These are teachers in the classroom primarily right now. They're teaching classes in what we call modern band, which is basically popular music, but we'll discuss that a little bit more later. And the focus is on for Little Kids Rock to really help students kind of just express their love and joy of music, to become music makers, doing all the fun stuff, playing, whatever instrument is in their hearts, be it, guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, technology, singing, hip hop, anything they want to do, and bringing that to the forefront.
That's excellent. So you talked about the modern band philosophy, the movement, and I guess that was one of my next questions. So the modern band method, where does that come from, the modern band, and why is it on your book and it's talking about guitars?
Well, I can talk a little bit about that one.
Great.
I think we all have experience. Pretty much everyone on staff has used method books at different times, and some aspects of them were really fantastic, and there were other aspects of them that we wanted to kind of put our own spin on and say, what are ways that we can really be incorporating student choice, student composition, improvisation throughout every tune the kids are working, through each section that they're working on. And we also really wanted to find a way, because we work with such a wide scope of teachers, and some of them, their instrumentation is going to be guitars because that's what they have access to at their school. And maybe they're going to build something, into more later, but it's working well for them now. So we wanted something that would work for just guitar, or if you had, a class of guitars and now you got a donation of 2 keyboards, so you want to add that in. And so it can really build and be flexible so that students can teach in a student-centered, teachers can teach in a student-centered way. not only just what the instruments they have access to, but what their kids are most excited about, and all of those other considerations. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Scott.
Well, I was just saying, like, you hit the nail on the head. So also, like when I started teaching, my perspective was I was coming from not a music ed background, but just a music degree background. And so when I got in the classroom, like I was teaching, like I think many, I was a secondary teacher. So like many of the secondary teachers, I was teaching beginning instruments, AP music theory, jazz band, marching band, concert band, like all these classes. I had 6 classes and every one of them was a different class. And then I had the modern band, which at that time for us, it was called guitar. And so like the thing that I found, the only way I survived teaching beginning instruments was going out and getting the, Essential Elements book and getting all my students that book. So like I could stay ahead. And that's the one thing that's really been missing in popular music in general. Like there's so many books out there on how to play guitar. There's tons of them, or keyboard. And then there's also tons of books on this is all the right notes for this song, repertoire books. But there really wasn't a method book that worked the same way that an orchestra book does, or a beginning instruments or a choir book does, where everybody can participate at the same time, but for a popular ensemble. And that was really the focus of it. And I think that from there, we can also tie in the question, like why modern band as a title. To be honest, it's because, if you look at the literature about popular music education, that's only one term that's used. There's tons of terms used when it comes to teaching not classical, not world music, not jazz, and not folk music. And, so we're that other piece there. And that was a term that was kind of come up with some of the largest school districts in the country. Los Angeles Unified, Dallas uses it, New York City uses it. So a lot of these huge districts use that as a term now. So it's kind of become an umbrella term. And we think it's valuable, but since we're there, what does the modern band actually mean? It's basically an instrumentation and a repertoire. So the instrumentation is primarily guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, vocals, technology. Can be all of those things, can be some of those things. It can add other things, but primarily that's the core of it. And the repertoire, we like to say that it's student-centered. We don't like to say that it's popular music, because I taught a bunch of heavy metal kids, and they would name these bands that no one's ever heard of. They're not popular, but they're definitely popular, So for us, I think that the concept is it commercially radio friendly? Not all the time. It's really what our kids are growing up listening to and what they want to experience with that subset of instruments. So do some kids gravitate towards I really want to learn how to play Bach? Yeah, for sure. But primarily we're not in the same with the repertoire. Instrumentation isn't the same, that kind of thing. And if you take these popular musics and you put them for marching band, as I know I did with my marching band, that didn't make it modern band either. That was marching band, where we were playing popular music, which is very different.
Okay.
Yeah, I was being really successful as a teacher when my repertoire was wildly different from class to class, and even within. I remember having a bunch of kids want to learn "That's Life," the Frank Sinatra song, for our modern band, and I was like, "Sorry, what now?" I mean, yes, but also,
that's great.
And it turned out it was in, I think, Grand Theft Auto or something. It was one of those things where it was we brought it. I had that. I had kids who were learning K-pop. I had kids who were learning hip hop. It was all over the map, and that's when I felt like I'm doing something right, because I'm allowing them to go after what they're excited about.
And also, I would point out, similarly, I had students that were these heavy metal kids that would want to arrange, Beethoven symphonies, sections of that for a heavy metal ensemble or whatever. And you find that all the time in the repertoire, borrowings of other
That's
genres
awesome.
of music.
So that's where the student-centered concept comes in. The students kind of control what they play because it's stuff that they're interested in.
Yeah, and maybe now it's a good opportunity to show the video of some of our...
I think that would be great. I was going to just say, let's just move into the book and let's talk about it and let's do that stuff. So I'm going to back out and I'm going to let you guys take this on, and we'll come back after they do a demo here. We're going to come back. So put your questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. All right, let's see what we got.
Great. I'm going to share a video that is a compilation video of some students playing first, so you can get a feel for all of the different ways this manifests.
Mis amigos bailan. traffic on the bridge. I walk the streets, pivot. The planet spark into a flame. My man is getting Dutch, let me spell out my name. I am the A-L-E-S-A-N-T.
All right, so you can see, I mean, the whole point here is that this should work for your students. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't know if modern band is for me because my students don't like hip hop or they don't like rock. It's like, great, then the student-centered aspect for them is whatever they are excited about. I'll also show just a kind of a teaser overview of the book series as a whole.
Before you do that for a second, Mary, I just want to also mention just one of the fun things I think about that particular video clip is, you know, people always say, well, what is this for? Does this work for what ages? You know, for what genres? Mary was talking about the genres, but you know, that was 4 different groups, and I believe it was 1 elementary, 2 middle schools, and a high school. Where in the country, you know, there was like 2 schools from Los Angeles, 1 school from Chicago, 1 from Philadelphia, and you can see they all have different like backgrounds, and those are all in school programs that you're watching there. It's not like an after school club. And by the way, also, if you're watching this and you're teaching at a local music store or whatever, that doesn't mean, of course, you can't do this, whatever. No, this is still for everybody. That's just our experience as Little Kids Rock is working with those populations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so let me get into this book overview now.
The Modern Band Method series provides a guided lesson plan for the absolute beginner, complete with audio tracks, video lessons, and many popular songs by the biggest artists of the day. These books, for guitar, bass, drums, and keyboard, work in tandem with the other instrument methods in the series, allowing students to play the same song together as a full band or explore individually. The video lessons give students immediately playable exercises so that they can begin making music from page 1. Let's see an example.
So now we're going to play a drum beat. We're going to use our right hand to play 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And with our left hand, we're going to play on beats 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right together, right together, right together, right together.
Students will incorporate vocalizing, composition, and improvisation throughout the series. Take a look at a simple power chord composition exercise.
So now that we know how to play a power chord, we're going to write a chord progression using them. So we can pick any 4 numbers, and we'll place our pointer finger on the frets that we choose. So let's choose 3, 2, 6, and 5. And the rhythm pattern will be 1, 2, and. So ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and. 2 and. 1, 2 and. 1, 2 and. 2 and. 4. 1, 2 and.
By the end of this book, students will have the tools to communicate their original comping patterns and chord progressions in a variety of notation styles, while being inspired by music that they know and love.
All right, so that gives a feel for what you see inside of the books and how they kind of work together. There's a lot to explore with those, and we feel we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on both the way that they've been working together and just the ability to use those instructional videos so that teachers who are just getting started with this methodology, if it's new, you know, like you get to be the guide on the side with your students and learn with them and have fun, rather than feeling like you need to be the source of all knowledge, which is never a healthy thing for us, but it's I think it's a pretty common feeling that we have as teachers in the classroom sometimes.
Yeah, I think people have really dug the books, particularly during lockdown/quarantine, because of there's digital versions as well, and the digital versions, like it's just like you can do the whole thing there, click the button, it's embedded in the text. But the paper versions, which we also have and which we love, come with you know, codes that you use to unlock the audio tracks and the video tracks. So all those resources are there for anybody.
Yeah, I wonder if we want to just do like a quick, we kind of saw that body drumming exercise, and this is always such an interesting format. Like probably a lot of the teachers in the room, how weird it is to teach to nobody, but I think it's kind of fun if we actually make a little bit of music together today. So let's do that. Let's
I'll mute and join you.
Perfect. So I'm just going to invite you to take your right hand and put it anywhere comfortable on your shoulder, and your left hand anywhere comfortable on your leg, or it could be like on your stomach, wherever is comfortable for you to reach. All right, so just like we were doing in the video, we're going to do right hand, both hands, right hand, both hands, right hand, both hands. And already, like in the books, I can start playing along to songs because this is like the core of the backbeat on drums. But now I'm gonna have us switch to eighth notes on our right hand, so it'll be da, 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 da. All right, let's try that. 2 and ready, go. 1, 2, together, together, together. Yeah, nice. And now you can use some of the backing tracks that are provided for students to get used to this kind of thing. I'm going to count down from 4, and then we're going to play a crash just into the air. So 4, 3, 2, 1, crash. Nice. One more time. 4, 3, 2, 1, crash. And then we're going to end after this one. 4, 3, 2, 1, crash. So we like to do that one because you don't have to have an instrument handy. But there's very similar steps for all the instruments involved. So on guitar, we start with just like muted strumming, 3-string chords. Scott, do you want to like just...
Just to give an example, sure. So I think that almost anybody that's ever bought a guitar book, they start off, maybe playing, playing a couple open notes, melodies and stuff like that. And then once they introduce a chord, it's almost always an A chord or something like that. We actually start much easier. The first chord we learn is an E minor chord, just the low 3 strings. And then we add in a G chord, but a little version of it. And then we can already play like a whole bunch of songs. So then we add in a simple C chord. And by the end of the first chapter, students, we've seen this in kids in classes we visited, they can play a bunch of songs like the first day using those 3 very, very basic chords. And then you put that together with, a student on a drum set playing the basic beat that Mary just showed you. And next thing you know, you're starting to put a band together and you get some kid on the bass just playing the low string open, So it's all about that, starting at very, very simple building blocks, putting them together and having success and being able to do it at that level.
Yeah, and I'll just, add to that. If you all have questions about what this does look like at specific levels, please feel free to drop them into the chat. I taught modern band my last 3 years of teaching. I was teaching at a K-12 school, and I did modern band from kindergarten to 12th grade, and it looked very different in those years. But my kindergartners could play multiple chord songs on ukulele. My seniors were creating their own albums, so, and like everything in between those things. So it is really very cool to see how kids can progress when they're empowered with something that starts off very accessible and then just slowly builds and gives them more and more tools to actually create their own music in the way that they want to see that expression happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point too. Like I taught high school. And I think that a lot of times, one of the things I really liked when we sat down and worked on these books, and, there was a few of us that got together and like really had to like ping pong ideas off each other. I'm a guitar player through and through. So of course, when I started thinking about the guitar stuff, all the songs I was choosing, like maybe Mary on drums would be like, it's kind of like that doesn't really work great for me. Or Spencer with working on the bass book would be like, cool, but the bass line's way too, isn't as appropriate, or it's too hard here, or this song doesn't have keyboards. So it was really interesting looking at it from the perspective of a band instead. Yeah, like really, really, really just a very, very different kind of concept of we all have to think about this together. And then like one of the other questions we get all the time is like, well, why no vocal book? And we thought it was really important for a few reasons to not start with a vocal book in the first group. And the primary thing is every book is a vocal book. Every single one of these books discusses singing and says it's important. The drummer should sing, keyboard player should sing, the guitar player should sing, the bassist should sing. So we're starting work on book 2 of this series, and we're really looking forward to expanding that series. Will have a vocal book, so it will be separate, and at that point we feel like it's interesting when we see this in the classroom too. A lot of teachers specifically get worried about like how we choose how we're going to do the instruments separately and who plays what and stuff like that. Can I do them all at the same time? And I always think this is first of all a little bit amusing, because teaching beginning band, no one's ever like, okay, everyone's playing flute for the first semester, and once I'm done with the flutes, then next semester we can do clarinet. No, you're teaching all of the band instruments right at the same time, and you have to figure out how to make it work. But unlike, I think, beginning instruments, one of the beauties of this is all of your kids can learn the basics of all of these instruments within a couple of days. So, like I know, like if I had flute players, they've got to work on the flute for a while, first of all, before they don't fall out of their chair after 5 minutes because of the breathing. And, to get that tone, to play something that you're happy with on the trumpet isn't something you can do at the end of the first day. It's not like you're walking out there, you're typically playing that song. But what's nice about a lot of these modern band things, and what we see with a lot of our teachers, is they'll switch instruments constantly and consistently. So in the first 5 weeks, every kid in the class might learn the basics of all of these instruments and the anticipation of them singing as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the high level overview of how this all came together, and kind of what you see in the books. And then we can maybe, Andrea, if you have some more questions, or want to bring in teacher questions.
Yeah, we've gotten a question so far, and I'm not sure if can you guys see the question?
Yeah, Patricia's question in the chat.
Yeah, or do you want to answer it later? Because we're going to go into how to get your program started. If this could be an example that we talk about. What do you think?
Well, I think that we could address a little bit of this, because look, it's hearing loss is especially very important, especially for those of us that
read Patricia's question.
Oh yeah, sure. I wasn't sure if people could.
In case anybody's listening to the recording without seeing it visually.
Thank you.
All right, sure. So from Patricia, she says, let's see, I'm a traditional band teacher thinking of adding or converting to modern band. Yay. I teach in a standard portable classroom, no band room, so small, loud, nowhere else to send kids. That means 100% whole group instruction all the time, kind of like we were just talking about. So suggestions for that situation. Also need suggestions for hearing protection. Absolutely. I already have hearing loss from teaching in here, so need to protect my and my students' hearing. Thanks.
I would love to speak to that, because I taught that K-12 program I had was in like at a former elementary school building. So like I had an elementary sized classroom with often, like 35 middle schoolers at the end of the day, sun beating down, like that kind of situation.
8 drum sets.
Yeah, and I did have multiple drum sets and all of that kind of stuff, but there are a few things that can kind of save you there. For one thing, a lot of our teachers tend to have a backline and then like an acoustic section of students. So my classroom, my middle school class, which is typically my biggest one, might have 10 kids playing acoustic ukulele, another 10 or 5 or 10 playing guitar, a few with keyboards, which is easier to control volume, and then I'd have a couple of kids on drums, a with, and then or two electric guitars plugged in. Same deal with basses. Same deal with like one keyboard who would be our lead on that tune. That worked out really well for a few different reasons. My program, I had one middle school class. And so it was like all my middle schoolers were in that class together. So as they were new and learning, they were able to play their acoustic instrument and like get the feel for what was happening in the ensemble. And then really I would just start asking them like, I can like tell that you're getting great on this song. How about we put you on electric for this one? And they would take turns and trade off and do those sorts of things. I did recommend, I don't know if anyone out there uses the Etymotic earplugs. I really recommended those to my students and their parents, honestly, because like, let's be honest, like who's more likely to purchase those? And they're, like $8 or $10 a pair. So, some of my students used those. And then for me, I did find it to be very helpful to have amplification on my voice. To save my voice during the day. My students were really great. I would give them a hand signal and they understood that was like, hey, 15 seconds of wait time for you to like finish up whatever you're, working on with your section, and we're coming back because it got loud. It's just like reality. But, still just like being able to project my voice a little bit. And then also I wore hearing protection most of the time while teaching. I liked those Etymotics. Are like really great, particularly if you're not quite ready for like custom fitted earplugs, or you want something if you're like me and you're like, I know I'm gonna lose these. So having like a couple of $10 pairs was more appealing to me than like one really nice set for like $150. So that kind of, that addresses like a little bit of the instrumentation and hearing protection. Scott, do you have anything more to add?
Did your kids have earplugs too?
It was optional for us. It was of the laundry list of things that I could control in a day. I didn't feel like I could also add making sure kids have earplugs in at all times.
Well, and they weren't in your class all day. You were the one in your class all day.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a ton to add into the hearing protection because I'm still bad at that myself. Even though I did just watch Sound of Metal. So I'm really, oh man. I play in a band right now with a drummer who was only at like 80% of hearing loss. Has 80% hearing loss. So I think it's really valuable, but there are lots of options out there to try to do that. In terms of the first question too, there's 2 points I kind of wanted to make really quickly. The first one is also don't feel like you need to have electric anything to start, including a drum set. You can feel like maybe you started out, kids, with acoustic guitars and maybe ukuleles, maybe an acoustic bass if you want one. Keyboards that you can, once again, obviously change the volume on, but start with a cajon or a percussion basket instead of a full drum set is fine as well. You get to do what works for you, for sure. And that as long as the kids are going to buy in still in ways that to make it work. I mean, especially they might say, oh, it doesn't sound like they want it to. Man, go on YouTube and you take those like heavy rock songs and you look for those acoustic versions of them. You can find like everything has people making their own approximations of the songs, which is so important. It's such an important musical skill. And the last thing you mentioned also is, as a traditional band teacher, either adding or converting. I want to make it very clear, both Mary and I are very strong proponents of modern band, but also strong proponents of all kinds of music education. And at no point does Little Kids Rock feel like the solution to music education is modern band and not other bands. It's never about supplanting. It's always about supplementing. I think that's a really important thing. We knew that this is something that worked. And we often get this question. I think we were going to maybe talk about this later, but might as well bring it up now. But we get the question all the time, specifically about, well, if we start doing popular music in our classroom, is it going to destroy my traditional program? And the answer is maybe. And also you might destroy your traditional program by not doing this as well. It's hard to tell. But about like, we've actually done studies with this, and some of them have been published, not by us, but by university, researchers. And it looks like about 92% of our teacher base responded that adding modern band to their programs increased membership in their school music programs overall, not just in a popular class, but overall the other classes blossom. And as a matter of fact, I have a PhD in music education as well. And my dissertation's about that with my own students. We found that 100% of my non-graduating students involved in modern band the following year took a different music class as well, or instead. So in other words, all of my students the next year either took choir, orchestra, marching band, concert band, or jazz band. They all will just want, we find this all the time. The more music you do, the more you want. And that really comes down to, you can look at Mary and I as a great example of that. We came from the exact opposite ends. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, you started out as a traditional classical percussionist. I started out as a rock guitar kid that never wanted to do anything but that. And like, we both ended up in the same pathways. I went and got a degree in music theory, studying classical music theory. And Mary is one of the best gigging musicians I know in the world right now, so.
Aw.
Yeah, no, it really is true. I mean, I also, even at my school, part of why I had this K-12 modern band program was because we were just too small to really like have a big choir. But I had kids every year who got into, the honor choirs and things like that. And I was always really encouraging of them. It's like, yeah, of course, like do what you want. So yeah, it's, I'm glad you brought that up, Scott, because there's sometimes an assumption that there's like some kind of this going on. And that's just really, from our perspective anyway, it's not the case.
Yeah, and I think it's super important. Like there's not one person here that only listens to the music they listened to when they were 11 years old still. It just doesn't happen. It's like your tastes have changed and they've grown. Every single one of us that's happened to, and that will happen with your students as well. And it will happen much faster the more music they're introduced to, because I think that this is also a thing that comes with modern band and something we took very seriously in the book, which I think comes out. The examples we use and the songs we use, they're kind of interchangeable with a lot of other stuff. What's really important is the core values of the book: improvisation, composition, basics of music fundamentals, right? Instrumental technique and skills, comping, right? Making musical decisions about what to play when you're given some basic information. So all of that's super important and interchangeable. And I think also a lot of times one of the big concerns more traditional musicians face that went through traditional music ed programs and are maybe classically trained musicians, particularly because jazz gets to do a lot more improvisation primarily, but is that like, I've done this and this is so different. And I think that we're here hopefully in the book to prove not really, it's not. Your ears still work the same way. You can still use a lot of the musical skills that you've gained over here to also do this. You just have to familiarize yourself with the style a little bit more, which is really why we have examples like that. And I would say that 98% of all the music in our book are real stuff. Like, we don't have like scale exercises. We have very little, like maybe finger exercises that aren't actual music you'd find in songs.
Mhm. Well, I think that let's get into more of the nitty gritty here then, because you were talking to me when we were in our planning meeting about the things that you hear from teachers the most, like what are the biggest obstacles to starting these programs? And I'm going to jump to the last one that we talked about, which is the one that you said you get the most, is teachers are just unsure of how to teach this way because it's not something that we learned in college. So, and that's essentially what you all do, is you teach teachers how to do this. So where do you start with something like that for a traditional band director who wants to branch out to this? What would you
I normally tell people to play to your strengths to start, and very close second is start having real conversations with your students about their needs and wants. So if I'm someone who feels like I'm a strong singer, I'm going to keep it really basic on, maybe like a little bit of movement and body percussion, but we're going to sing a lot. I'm going to ask them what songs they want to sing. We're going to talk about it. And then as I start hearing like, oh, miss, I want to like play drums, then I'm going to be like, great, well, let's learn a little bit about that. I'm going to like start teasing some of those things into my instruction, and build from there. And there's a lot of different considerations, like we talked about, like what you have access to materials wise. We have some teachers who do modern band instruction, but like really what they're doing a lot of is singing and body drumming because they can't get a class set of guitars right now, or ukulele, or whatever. And so I really think that like those are the two prongs. It's like start with what is not going to keep you up at night because our jobs are hard enough already, and then start having conversations with your students. And like, it's hard. That's hard. It takes a lot of time and it's difficult. And sometimes we need to build language to empower students to tell us what they want because they very rarely have the opportunity to tell teachers what they want to learn. So for me, I found with my elementary school students, I couldn't just say like, what kind of songs you guys digging these days? Like, who's your favorite band? Because they didn't even know. Like they might be able to sing me part of a song that they know or something. So I started, saying to teachers, like, do they ever break in a song? Like what kind of stuff are they singing? And then sometimes I would put that on as they were coming in, or like put on a bunch of different songs. Some days, like literally, I would just throw a dance party for my elementary school kids, let them dance for like a half an hour to like while I was DJing, just to see like what hit with the kids, just like, okay, what are they getting really excited about? What do they know? What is like, this is weird. I don't know this. And started to have those kind of conversations. I think I've also seen teachers have a lot of success with talking to their wider community too, and talking to parents about like, what kind of music do you all listen to at home, or if you do listen to music, are you using like Spotify? Do you have a record player? Are you on YouTube, or is it just like stuff that's in movies, things like that? So as I'm saying this, it's like very obvious. This is a long process. So I caution people sometimes against going like whole hog on something right away, where they're like, well, I'm going to do this right. So I'm going to get an electric this and this and this, and I'm going to drop like 50 grand. Like, God bless if you have that kind of budget anyways, right? But like, just like take it slow, play a lot of music, just play a lot of music with what you have, and then go from there.
I think that, yeah. And Mary and I clearly have some different approaches for sure. She's way more organized and thoughtful than I am. I'm very much fly by the seat of my pants. And like, I think that everything that Mary brought up is fantastic. I would say this as the less nice of the two of us. Your first year is going to suck. You're going to fail a lot. It's going to be hard. It's good. Look, I don't trust anybody that tells me their first year of teaching music was easy or was fun. No, you should have gone home and cried at least twice a week. I know I did, and felt overworked and overwhelmed and like, no, but like, I think that it's going to be tough. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's so rewarding, and hopefully the payoff is so great. But don't over plan. Don't like be like, okay, here is my syllabus for all 20 weeks of this semester. And it's gonna be this, like, I remember speaking specifically with a teacher, I think it was in Connecticut, and they were like, they had been doing really well with modern band. And I think it was their first year doing it. And they hit this wall where they had picked this one song they thought all the kids would like, it was like on the radio a bunch. It was a hip hop tune. And it just fell flat. The kids were like, I don't like this song. And the teacher was like, and I couldn't get them to work on it. And I had like 3 more weeks to work on it, and they just wouldn't learn it. And I was like, have you thought about going in and saying, hey, you guys don't like this song? We're going to do a different one. And they did. And they're like, oh yeah, that worked. So you have to be prepared to switch a lot and switch streams a lot. And I think that this brings up to me as like kind of a music theory, very standards based, thoughtful educator. Like, you should realize that any song that exists can reach some standards in certain different ways or teach what you want it to teach. So a lot of times what I would recommend to someone who's particularly focused on like, the academic side of music education and really has thought of it from that way, step one, the Grammys just happened. Look at a bunch of songs that won Grammys this year, and then like listen to one of them and like figure out what the form is, figure out what the chord progression is, listen to how you can modify it, how you can make it easy. Is it diatonic? Is it not diatonic? Can I move the key to make it work better with my students? Like all of those kind of aspects are tailored to it. And it's something we work on in our workshops where we really talk about it. Like, what are some music topics that you could do there? Could you have your students listen to it? Could you have them sing the melody? Could you have them change the words to be words that suit their lives? So all of those skills, it's really about the more time you spend listening to music you're unfamiliar with and trying to attach the concepts you think are important in your classroom, the better off you're going to be. So I think that's a very important and feasible way to do it. And hopefully we do that in the book a lot.
Well, and last point I'll make on that is if you're like, this is really not my world, but I want it to be, number one thing you can do is join a band.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's like outside of the box, like just join a band. Like the kind of band that's just going to jam every once in a while, or like play at free functions, or like just go do an open mic. Like the idea that we would teach an ensemble that we've never been a part of, you know what I mean? It's like, but it's not anyone's fault if they didn't have that experience,
of course,
in school. So, there's a lot on our, but once I started asking my students we did like, with my secondary kids that I saw once a week, or my secondary kids that I saw rather every day of the week, one day a week or every other week became open mic night, open mic day. And once we started doing that is really when I said, I need to start doing this. I was gigging a little bit at the time already, but not as like a front person. And I was like, I need to understand how vulnerable this makes my students. And it scared me a lot. I was very uncomfortable. But now I do that all the time, and it makes it a lot easier. So
I think that, and I'm sorry, I know that we want to move on, but
Yes.
Mary would probably agree with this, but we find that after we've done workshops with these teachers, the teachers that have the most success in modern bands aren't the teachers that play the instruments the best. They're the teachers that actually have joined bands since then. Even if they never were in a band before, those are the teachers that really excel. We have all these teachers that maybe their own playing skills aren't great, but the fact that they've actually tried it. So when you get the books, man, get some other faculty members that don't even play these instruments, put them on drums once a week, get them together. We've seen this in a lot of schools too, and it's super fun. So
I love that idea, because you can learn along with the students. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. My goodness. And I'm glad you brought up the books, because I happen to be holding them. But let's turn this back into to these books then, because these are some great materials. If you don't know where to start, these are some excellent things to at least teach how to get going on these instruments. So let's just put a scenario out here. Well, first of all, we've got a question from Corey, and I do want to address that one really quick. Is there a teacher's edition available, or is it just the 4 method books?
Currently, there are 4 method books available. The teacher's method book should be coming out, I want to say, very quickly. It's in the final round of edits with Hal Leonard right now, so I'm hoping it will come out in the next month or 2 maximum. Also, there is a ukulele book that is coming out. We're hoping it's actually in print by September at the latest. It's like all the text edits are done, the graphics are being made right now, and then we have to do the videos, but it's coming up. So yes, the teacher's edition is not quite available yet, but will be available soon.
Excellent. So if I wanted to, it's March now, so things, planning for the fall is a great time to do that. If I was going to want to start a program in the fall and say I'm a middle school band director and I really want to get into this, start recruiting students and get parents on board, and I want to use these books, I think this is a great place to start. So I've got my materials. What do you recommend for, what's a good starter set of instruments? I suppose it depends on like how many kids are enrolled in the class, what their interests are, but what would you start with if it was, say, we had 10 kids in the class?
All drum sets, right, Mary?
Oh,
I love drums so much, but that is the opposite of my advice.
One maybe with
Right.
a lot of dampeners on it.
Yeah, for sure. I really think at a secondary level, I'd split with ukulele, like guitar and like keyboard or ukulele, depending on like maybe what you're comfortable with and what your kids are into. I would definitely ask, again, before making that kind of investment. But yeah, I think that, splitting between some, like harmonic, you just like any
have some harmonic and some
great.
melodic. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. How do you get parents and administration involved in this? I mean, how do you get them on board to add this to your program?
It's funny because I get that question all the time, and I have never once heard of a parent or administrator being like, no, we don't want this, because like, and I'm a through and through classical musician. So like I would do these concert band, we'd be doing, getting superiors at festivals, and then we'd have the concert for the parents, and like, 17 of them would show up. And the principal would be there and be like, oh, I can't believe I have to be here on a Thursday night to watch this, because they weren't as into, Gustav Holst's Second Suite as I was, apparently.
Come on.
But then like the second I was like, okay, well, my modern band kids are going to do this, all of a sudden I had 1,000 people in the auditorium. I think oftentimes your principal will trust you. And I know my principal loved that the marching band was apparent everywhere, was okay that I was doing music, thought it was important. But the second I had a modern band that was also pulling in a lot of kids, they said the nicest thing to me that they've ever said, and probably the only nice thing they ever said, let's be honest. They said, Scott brings in kids that aren't going to be involved in school functions otherwise. A lot of kids coming to his modern band concerts and enrolled in the class are kids that aren't going to the school dances. They're not going to go to the football games or sporting events. They're not joining after school clubs. They're not doing those kind of things, but they're coming to this. So I think that was really important. It wasn't just that I was reaching that subset of kids. It was just I was reaching the general population of school, as well as these kids that nobody else could reach. And I think the parents were really appreciative of that as well.
Yeah, my trick for parents, and this is, so my students decided their own repertoire at the secondary level. They like created their own set lists, but we always had to have one song in the set list that's going to make someone's parent cry or guardian cry. So like,
example,
like I remember, like we did mostly contemporary music. I know, like I already mentioned Sinatra, so I don't want to get like the wrong idea that I was like playing all like 60s rock and roll. But like one semester we did God Only Knows, and it was like such a tearjerker for the audience. And I was like, that's important. I was like, we make music for ourselves and we also make music for the audience. So that was like a really great way to get that buy-in.
Here's God Only Knows, followed up with some Iron Maiden. Here's the Trooper.
Yeah, I think we also played like Africa Bambata on that same concert. So it just, it's all over the place.
So I'm looking through these books now, and it looks to me like by the end of this, you've got some full band songs in here. Like they wouldn't even have to create arrangements. I mean, you've got everything they need in here for some concerts.
That's by chapter 1. That's actually so there's 12 sections to the book, and 9 of those sections conclude with a full band.
Oh yeah, I see that.
But by the end of it, we're getting, well, by the end of it, we're definitely getting the skills progress as the students do. And I think oftentimes too, teachers like, well, how about, we've seen all these iconic notation examples. Are you teaching traditional music notation as well? And the answer is yes. Every book goes into traditional music reading as well. And I think most importantly, uses each when it's more appropriate. Like, they're learning how to read chord charts if they want to do that, so they can communicate in one way. They're learning how to read tab, because that's how most guitar players communicate at this point. They're learning how to read traditional music. We're just doing it a little bit later. I think by section 5, it starts building more into that. And with the goal is to start making sure everyone's playing. And I think that we took ways that I think are pretty innovative to introduce traditional sheet music reading as well. I think we started with a Lady Gaga song.
But I mean, that's and that's great, because I know a lot of teachers, sometimes they worry when they make their own arrangements about getting the licenses for it. And can I do this at all? But you've taken all of that. It's done. It's already done. And so they can just have fun and play. And I love that approach. And I especially love the approach of having all the kids learn all the instruments. I hadn't thought of that.
And I do want to mention as well, like, it was really important for us that there be repertoire in here that was going to inspire kids, and they were going to be allowed to see themselves reflected in that repertoire. Like, they're, you know, as a woman who plays drums, I didn't really get to see a lot of examples of people who look like me playing my instrument. So there were a lot of strides taken towards that in these books. And like the instructors that are featured in the videos, we just really wanted to make sure that kids had the opportunity, again, to see themselves and like know that this music is for them.
And if people want to see more of the video, there are closer look videos. If you go to our website and look at the books, they're at the link that I put in the chat. There is a closer look video on there, so you can see more of what the video content from the book looks like. We've got another question from Patricia. Are the books suitable for high school from the beginning or more geared for elementary, middle school?
They work great. I would do these. I mean, with high schoolers, they're going to move through the materials faster, for sure.
Yeah.
But these are all like, because they're like all real songs. I don't think a high schooler is going to feel like they're a little kid, you know.
And there's no cutesy pictures or anything in here except for, you know, cute hand position pictures. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
we
high school would be fine, or middle
we
school.
originally thought about trying to do a book for elementary and a book for secondary, and they were like, why? It's going to be the same material. The only difference is going to really be maybe our language will use more dude in high school. Okay, dude, try this out. But
No, I think this is great. This is last call for questions. So we are about out of time. This has just been a fun conversation.
it went too fast. Can we extend this another hour?
Andrea's
on the
going
East-
home.
On the East Coast, I'm going to say no, but West Coasters, this has just been such a blast to talk about this. It's something that we don't talk about this enough, and all these different opportunities for kids to make music outside of the traditional ensembles that are out there right now. And I really support this, and I'm glad that there is now, you know, a structured method that people who need that kind of structure can kind of ease into it this way, and then they can branch off into all sorts of different things. We'll put a link in the follow-up email that we get tomorrow to our list of materials that we've created. We made this list a long time ago for programs that have rock bands in their school.
Awesome.
You know, we have a list of all kinds of different materials that they could use, and this is right at the top of it, this method. But this is exciting.
Yeah, and I wonder if we could, you know, we talked a little bit about how we have a train the trainer model. We teach teachers. I'd love to we can add in the link to our professional development page. We have a lot of free virtual professional development. So if this is something you really want to dive into more, we would just love to have you at a workshop, and it's at no cost to you because we have awesome funders.
And we have some coming up
See,
too. We have
you
like
buried the
one
lead on that, Mary. That's amazing. So yeah, actually, could you is it just littlekidsrock.org and all that information is up there?
Yeah, I can actually get that link real fast probably.
Okay, but I will definitely include that because this is a great time to plan for this stuff for the future. You can get the books, go to a training this summer, get everything organized, and then have that kick off in the fall. What an exciting time. And I think this, because of all the online resources here, this would work really well for a virtual situation right now. If you have kids each get a book and they can start working on this stuff at home, you know, with virtual lessons.
And this is probably the best link that we have right now that will take you to, it gives a link to our free online resources that you can use, as well as there's a link there just for signing up for workshops. So like Patricia's mentioned that she's trying to go to one of these Modern Band 101s. We have a Modern Band 101 coming up in, I think, a couple of weeks. That's a national one. It's open to anybody that wants to take it from wherever they're at.
Wow. Well, that's kind of how workshops are this summer.
Right.
It's from anywhere.
Trying to have
Okay.
some fun.
Are there any more questions from our audience? You guys have asked some great questions. While we wait for those, Mary and Scott, any final words from either one of you?
I mean, we'll know this is a success if we come back and Andrea is playing bass and guitar for us. for the next
Those are the
week.
two I can't play, so let's do it.
All right, that
Actually,
sounds good.
can't play drums either, so.
Well, we'll talk about that. But
Okay.
the only thing I was going to say is that if you have other questions about this and want to reach out to us directly, our emails are Mary at littlekidsrock.org and Scott at littlekidsrock.org. So not hard. And we really do. I mean, I get quite a few emails just asking some of the questions we talked about today, but you're like, I'm about to pull the trigger on my Sweetwater order. What do you think about this? Happy to, just talk people through that so they feel comfortable.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, we want to thank you all for being here with us today. We've had a great conversation. Thanks to all of our attendees, and watch for the email you'll get tomorrow with the follow-up links and a recording. And yeah, good luck with starting all your programs. Hopefully this gave you some, like I said, tools for your toolbox to give you some different things to think about for next year. And thank you so much to Mary and Scott for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to hear about this. So good luck to all of you and have a good evening.
All right. Ciao, everyone.